It is the year 1692. I am a cook for the pirates on the White Pearl, but I'm not a pirate. I am not like them. I am only on board to get away from Spain heading anywhere. My name is Lupe Gonzalez Jimenez. Mi madre named me Lupe, which means the river of the wolf. I spent all my time in the hull. I don't get to enjoy the beauty of the sea during the day, only whenever I go up to toss the food scraps from the lower deck. But every night, I have the upper deck to myself. I would sit and stare at the night sky, at the millions of stars, and out at the vast darkness of the water and dream of a better life. It was at that time, one night after traveling for many months, when I saw a dark mass emerging from the sea. I ran over to the taffrail and peered out into the darkness as if a few feet would make me see any clear. But I saw it. It was land. I called up to the night watcher. "I think it's land! I think it's land!" I shouted excitedly up to him. He was perched high up on the crow's nest. Having heard me, he moved over to look in the direction of where I pointed. Looking through his binoculars, "You are right, Senor Lupe. It is indeed land," he shouted back. With that, he shouted out his announcement, "Land ho!" Little did I know, as the rest of the crew members stampeded to the deck, that we were sailing towards the wickedest city in the world, Port Royal, Jamaica.
Thank you, Lupe. I'll take it from here. Welcome to another episode of This Happened Here. In this series, I take you around the US and anywhere else in the world where I find true and interesting stories to share with you. I was not able to travel to Jamaica and get you much footage for this video, but I have obtained some pictures and videos of what I promise to be a very interesting stories. Because today I will be talking about the once wicked city of Port Royal, Jamaica, formerly the pirate capital of the world and once home to the dregs of the earth. I will show you the way it was then and how it is now, and I will be telling the story from the point of view of a Spanish lad who sailed to Jamaica in 1692. I will also share with you some other footage of Jamaica and sourced pictures of the sunken city of Port Royal. So pull up a chair and let me tell you this story. I am your host, LT Bartek. We finally pulled into the harbor and docked, then disembarked the ship, taking out cargo, both humankind and merchandise. As I watched them shove these poor souls into cages, my heart cried for them, because these people had been taken from their homes to be sold as slaves in a foreign land. But now was not the time to do anything about it. I will try to free them when it was safer for both them and me. We finally unloaded everything we needed from the ship. Then the captain shared the stolen loot with the crew, which had been decided on even before we set sail. God forgive me, I took my share. I needed it for this new world. Then I grabbed my bag and looked around, taking in my surroundings. I marveled at the architecture of the buildings that lined the streets and the gruffness of the islanders. The weather was beautiful here, warm. I inhaled the saltiness of the sea and picked a direction and walked away from the ship forever. But I quickly realized that this was not the place for me. I would not live here, not in the city. I walked up the street past the taverns, brothels, and gambling dens, ignored the shouts of drunks, gamblers, cutthroats, and prostitutes calling out to me and other passers. Some of the crew from my ship took them up on their offer. I scoffed, having been brought up by my fair madre, who taught me of the evil that comes with drinking and loose living. Now I needed food and rest, so I went in search of a hostel. An hour later, I found one that was quiet and devoid of revelers. I booked the room and, keeping my satchel with me, went to eat. Then time passed. I found a job loading and unloading ships that came to the island, and at night I stayed in. This place was unlike anywhere I have ever imagined. Pirates would come to the island with loot stolen from other ships and with slaves, humans taken from their homeland to be sold to farmers of sugarcane and for breeding. One of the most wretched of them was a pirate by the name of Henry Morgan, Britain's most notorious pirate. Although he had died 4 years ago, others still carried on his tradition, stealing and killing. I saw death every day, as these men and women would think nothing of killing each other over even a piece of bread. But I stayed away from it all, working here only to get enough money to move further inland and buy myself a home. On the morning of June 7th, 1692, a day I will never forget, I woke with a feeling of dread. Every bone in my body told me that something terrible was about to happen. I had found a better lodging further from Port Royal, closer to Kingston. It was a little safer there. I had grown tired of the looting and revelry. Twice I had come home to find all my belongings stolen. Now, as I stood looking towards the city of Port Royal, contemplating whether to go to the dock, I found I was unable to move. Then, just as I made my decision to go back to my room, I felt the earth begin to shake with such ferocity I could barely grab a hold of the post by the building to keep myself from being thrown to the ground. I screamed out in fear. My body was being shaken like an empty sack. Was today the day of judgment? But no one could hear me among the other screams and rumbling of the buildings surrounding the place where I stood. I felt as if the whole world was shaking. My feet gave out and I fell to the ground. The rumble got worse, and huge trunks of the building began to fall to the ground around me. I heard it as a low whine at first. Then it got louder. It became a deafening roar, rivaled only by the screams of the dying. Earthquake had measured 7.5 magnitude, and because the city of Port Royal was built on mostly sand, it took no time for all of it to be dragged down into the sea, taking with it around 2,000 mostly miserable souls. Then everything stopped, except the falling pieces of buildings. The air then changed. The earthquake was not the end, because off in the distance, I saw the rising of the sea going up 30 feet into the air and advancing towards me. The earthquake had caused a tidal wave. I ran to the coconut tree in the yard and climbed as fast as my legs could carry me. I was just at the top when the water hit and washed over me. It threatened to drag me from the quaking tree, but I hung fast and strong, and it left me clinging to the tree, saved, crying. I turned and looked toward the city of Port Royal. It was gone. There was nothing that remained but a strip of land. 33 acres had just vanished before my eyes and were now lying at the bottom of the sea. 2,000 of the 7,000 people were killed that day, and 4 of the 5 forts were destroyed, forts that I would have been at if I had gone to work. Later, when the water receded, I ventured over to look at what remained and to see if I could help with the rescue. But what I saw would remain with me until the day I died, for floating all around me were the bodies of the freshly dead, mixed with the bodies of the long dead, whose graves had been opened, releasing them once again to the surface. The looting, stealing, and selling of humans and the piracy of other ships, the sex workers, had me thinking of Sodom and Gomorrah, and like that city of old, this was destroyed because of the evil it brought to this world. But I will continue to live here in Port Royal, Jamaica, knowing that life is precious and I am not eternal. The earthquake did not stop the wickedness. It continued for another 50 years. Even on the day of the earthquake, there were people diving to see what they could steal from the sunken buildings. Pirates continued to prey on the Spanish ships as they crossed the channel, looting and killing most of the sailors as they passed by. Another of the most notorious pirates who was famous for his evil deeds was John Calico Jack Rackham. He was caught and hanged in 1720 at the gallows point in Port Royal by order of a pirate hunter by the name of Woodes Rogers. He was best known for his rescue of the castaway Alexander Selkirk. That story was the inspiration for Robinson Crusoe, a book written by Daniel Defoe. Though there has not been another earthquake of that magnitude, the city still got more than its share of fire, earthquakes, and hurricanes, further causing damage and destruction of the few remaining buildings and the rebuilding of Port Royal. The English closed its naval station at Port Royal, effectively closing it for business, and with the loss of jobs, most of the residents left. Then, in 1951, Hurricane Charlie hit Port Royal, destroying it even more and leaving just a few of the original buildings standing. Today, most of the remains of the 17th century city of Port Royal now lie 40 feet beneath the water. Visitors could still get glimpses of the city up to the 1900s. During that time, divers had been exploring and cataloging the submerged city. Then in 1969, Edwin Link discovered the most famous artifact. It was a pocket watch dated 1686, stopped at precisely 11:43. Because of the instant earthquake, most of the buildings were left intact and almost undisturbed. Because of its architectural wonders, the sunken city of Port Royal is now designated a National Heritage Site and was deemed so in 1999. Okay, that is that. Now that we have come to the end of the earthquake at Port Royal, Jamaica, I hope you enjoyed my telling of it. If so, give this video a like and share it with someone whom you think will find it interesting. And if you want to come with me on the next trip, click the subscribe button and select all. Doing that guarantees you as one of my travel companions. Also, comment if you've ever been to Port Royal and tell me what you thought of it. Well, that is all for now, folks. Remember to love yourself and others, and stay tuned for the next video. I upload once a week. Be good, and catch you on the next one. Love you. Bye.